"Ma'am, you need to step out of that vehicle right now." The words cut through the afternoon air like a blade. Eleanor Brooks sat perfectly still behind the steering wheel of her sedan. Hands resting at 10 and 2, engine off, she'd pulled into visitor parking space number 14 at Maplewood Academy, exactly 20 minutes ago. The dashboard clock read 3:12 p.m. Pickup time, the same time she'd arrived every Tuesday for the past 6 months. Through her windshield, a laminated placard hung from her rear-view mirror, clearly visible to anyone who cared to look. White card, stock blue, border the school's logo printed in the top left corner. Visitor parking permit dated today, October 21st, issued by the front office at 3:10 p.m., signed by the attendance clerk, her name written in careful block letters. Eleanor Brooks, purpose of visit student pickup, student name Maya Brooks. Grade 3, authorized by Samantha Brooks, parent, guardian. Every detail, correct, every box, checked the kind of documentation that should matter. Officer James Carter approached her driver's side window with measured steps, boots heavy against the asphalt. His right hand hovered near his belt. Fingers twitching, his partner younger, a woman with nervous eyes. Officer Laura Simmons hung back near their cruiser, parked at an angle that blocked Eleanor's exit. Eleanor kept her hands visible, another habit. One she'd learned long before today, officer. She said, her voice even, "Is there a problem? I'm parked in a designated visitor space with a valid permit." Carter leaned down, one hand now resting on her door. "This, lots for parents only. I'm here to pick up my niece." Eleanor gestured toward the placard without moving her hands from the wheel. "I have authorization from her mother. The permit was issued just minutes ago. Permit doesn't mean you belong here." The words landed with deliberate weight. Not a question, not even a statement of policy, just a declaration of territory. Behind Carter, the school's front door swung open. Principal Margaret Hill emerged, her heels clicking against the concrete walkway. She moved with a purpose, scanning the parking lot until her eyes found Eleanor's car. She said something to a teacher standing near the entrance, then adjusted her blazer and started across the lot. Eleanor's pulse remained steady. 23 years had taught her to recognize the shape of trouble before it fully formed the principal's trajectory. The officer's posture, the way the other parents, mostly white, mostly comfortable, slowed their approach to the building. Phones already rising, she reached slowly toward her glove compartment. Documentation, registration, proof of insurance, everything by the book. Carter's hand moved to his weapon. The parking lot went quiet. Even the children's voices from inside the building seemed to fade. Everything that happened next, every word, every decision, every consequence hinged on the next 10 seconds. And Eleanor Brooks knew exactly what was coming. 6 months earlier, Eleanor Brooks had made a promise to her sister, Tuesday afternoons, 3 Towers pickup, no exceptions. Samantha Brooks worked double shifts at Riverside Medical Center. The kind of medicine that didn't respect schedules or family obligations. Someone needed to be there for Maya when the final bell rang. Eleanor had said yes. Without hesitation, she'd rearrange her calendar block. The time made it work, because that's what family did. The alarm went off at 5:00 a.m. Every morning, Eleanor woke before the sound finished its first cycle, hand already reaching to silence it. Habit, her feet found slippers in the dark. The coffee maker had been preset the night before. Another habit, while it brewed, she spread her papers across the kitchen table. Color-coded folders, blue for urgent matters, yellow for review, green for completed files, waiting to be archived. She worked through each one with methodical precision, pen moving in neat annotations along the margins. A lifetime of reading documents had taught her something. Most people never learned details saved you, or they buried you. There was no in-between. Maya stumbled into the kitchen at 6:45. Braids askew, still half asleep. "Morning, Samantha. Morning, baby." Eleanor closed her folder and slid a plate of scrambled eggs across the counter. "Heavy. Leave in 20 minutes. They'd perfected this rhythm. Maya ate while Eleanor packed lunches, one for Maya, one for herself. Thermos of soup, sandwich, roytong wrapped in wax paper apples, sliced into quarters. Everything organized, Nothing forgotten. Samantha emerged at 700, was already in scrubs, running late on it as usual. She kissed Maya's forehead and grabbed the coffee Eleanor had poured for her. "You're a saint. I'm your sister." Eleanor handed her the travel mug. Different thing. Same result. Samantha squeezed her arm. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Eleanor drove Maya to Maplewood Academy 3 mornings a week. Samantha covered the other 2 when her schedule allowed Robert Brooks. Samantha's husband, Maya's father, traveled for work, gone more often than home. The arrangement worked. Mostly, the trouble started in the first week. Eleanor had pulled into the visitor lot, Maya chattering in the back seat about a science project. The security guard, a thick-necked man whose name tag read Michael Wallace, appeared at her window before she'd even turned off the engine. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested she needed help, the kind that involved leaving. "I'm dropping off my niece Eleanor." Gestured to Maya. "She's in 3rd grade. You have a visitor badge." Eleanor pointed to the placard hanging from her mirror issued by the front office 10 minutes earlier. Wallace studied it like it might be counterfeit behind them. 3 white parents drove past without being stopped. One waved at Wallace. He waved back. "All right," he said finally. "But park in the far row. These spots up front are for regulars." The far row meant a longer walk for Maya, but Eleanor had said nothing. She'd moved the car and walked her niece to the entrance, aware of eyes tracking their progress. It happened again the next week, and the week after that. By November, being stopped had become routine. Michael Wallace would ask for her badge, even after seeing her twice that same week. He'd remind her about parking in the far row. He'd watch her walk Maya to the building, like she might suddenly veer off toward some unauthorized area. The parent-teacher conference in October had been worse, Mr. Daniel Davis, Maya's homeroom teacher, sat behind his desk with Maya's progress report open. Samantha Brooks had been called into emergency surgery. Robert Brooks was in Denver. Eleanor Brooks came instead, arriving 15 minutes early with her own notebook and list of questions. Davis looked surprised when she introduced herself. "Oh, you're the aunt." "Yes, Zoe's mother asked me to attend on her behalf." "I see." He glanced at his notes. "And you're involved in Maya's education? Or is this just temporary?" Eleanor's jaw tightened. She kept her voice level. "I help with homework 3 evenings a week. I attend school functions. I'm on her emergency contact list. So yes, I'm involved. It's just..." Davis shifted in his seat. "We prefer to have conversations about academic progress with the primary guardians. Continuity. You understand. I understand that my sister is saving someone's life right now, and I'm here asking about Maya's math scores. Can we proceed?" They'd proceeded barely. Davis had been polite but distant, addressing most of his comments to the empty chair beside Eleanor, as if Samantha might materialize. When Eleanor asked about Maya's reading level, he'd answered in the tone people use with children when she'd questioned a grade on a science project. He'd bristled. 2 weeks later, a note came home requesting that all pickup authorizations be re-verified with the front office. Eleanor had complied. She'd filled out forms, provided her driver's license number, listed her relationship to Maya. Everything they asked for. The scrutiny hadn't stopped. It wasn't just the school last month at the grocery store on Central Avenue. Eleanor had been followed by security while shopping for Maya's birthday present. She'd noticed him 3 aisles in young guy radio on his hip, pretending to straighten merchandise while keeping her in his peripheral vision. She'd continued shopping, selected wrapping paper, picked up a card, and the security guard had stayed 10 feet behind her the entire time at checkout. He'd positioned himself near the exit, watching, waiting for her to give him a reason. Eleanor had taken her receipt and walked out without acknowledging him, because acknowledging it meant having a conversation she'd had 100 times before. And she was tired. The exhaustion wasn't physical. It was the weight of being watched, of having every action interpreted as suspicious, of knowing that her competence, her calm, her careful adherence to every rule. None of it mattered when people had already decided who she was at home. Eleanor Brooks worked with Maya on homework most evenings. She spread the assignments across the dining room table, reviewing each one with forensic attention. Show your work, she'd say. Tapping a math problem, if the instructions say, show your work, that means every step, details matter. Maya would roll her eyes, but I got the right answer. The answer isn't enough. You need to prove how you got there. Samantha Brooks had laughed one evening, watching them from the kitchen. You interrogate that homework like it's a witness on the stand. Eleanor had smiled, because a sloppy work has consequences. It was the kind of thing anyone disciplined might say. An accountant, an engineer, a project manager. Anyone who understood that details were the difference between success and failure. Miss Margaret Turner, their neighbor in Pinecrest Drive, 412, had nodded knowingly over coffee one Saturday morning. How many times has that school stopped you now? Too many to count. Eleanor stirred her cup. Michael Wallace acts like I'm casing the place. They see what they expect to see. Miss Turner shook her head. My son went through the same thing at his daughter's school. Chinese man picking up his own child, and they asked for his ID every single time for 2 years. What did he do? What could he do? Miss Turner shrugged. He kept showing the ID. That was the thing about these small cruelties. They accumulated, each one alone seemed too minor to fight security. Following you through a store? Maybe he was just doing his job, teacher. Questioning your involvement? Maybe he just wanted to speak with the parent guard. Stopping you at school? Maybe he didn't recognize you yet. But together they formed a pattern, a message delivered in increments. You don't belong here. November 12th started like any Tuesday. Eleanor awoke at 5:30, reviewed her notes over coffee. 3 folders today, all yellow made. Maya's lunch drove her to school, where Wallace stopped her at the gate. Same questions, same scrutiny, same reminders about parking in the far row. She went to work, the location unspecified, the nature of her duties unmentioned, important meetings, difficult decisions, the kind of day that required her full attention at 2:30 p.m. to 30 p.m. She changed in her office jeans instead of slacks, comfortable blazer. Instead of her usual jacket, simple jewelry, small earrings, a watch. Nothing that drew attention. She packed her work materials into her bag, locked her office door, and drove toward Maplewood Academy. She arrived at 2:52, 8 minutes early. Habit being late meant rushing, and rushing meant mistakes. The visitor lot was half full. Eleanor pulled into space. 14. Front row clearly marked. Visitor parking, not the far row Wallace preferred, but a legitimate spot. Nonetheless, she turned off the engine and checked her phone. 3 messages from Samantha about dinner plans, 1 reminder about Maya's school field trip. Next week at 3, Atlanta. She walked to the front office, the attendance clerk, an older woman named Mrs. Helen Parker, smiled when Eleanor approached. Here for Maya. Yes, ma'am. Parker filled out the visitor permit without being asked. They'd done this enough times that the routine was automatic. Name date, purpose, student name, parent, authorization. Parker signed at the bottom and slid it across the counter. She's excited about seeing you. Parker handed Eleanor Brooks the laminated placard she told me at lunch. You're taking her for ice cream, Eleanor smiled. If her homework's done, she walked back to her car, hung the placard from her rear-view mirror, and settled into wait. Pickup officially started at 3:20. The final bell would ring. In 12 minutes, other parents began arriving. SUVs and sedans filling the spaces around her. A white woman in a luxury sedan waved at Principal Margaret Hill, who emerged from the building to supervise dismissal. A man in a pickup truck called out a greeting to Mr. Daniel Davis. Parents who belonged, who weren't questioned. Eleanor sat with her hands on the steering wheel, patient, prepared, doing exactly what she was supposed to do at 3:12. She noticed the police cruiser. It pulled into the lot from the north entrance, moving slowly. The officers inside scanned the rows of parked cars. Eleanor watched them in her side mirror, a familiar unease settling in her chest. The cruiser stopped 50 feet behind her. Both officers stepped out. Eleanor's hands remained on the wheel, 10 and 2, visible steady. She watched in the mirror as the male officer James Carter spoke into his radio. His partner Laura Simmons looked uncertain, glancing between Carter and Eleanor's car. Eleanor took a slow breath. Here we go again. Carter started walking toward her, his approach deliberate, hand already moving to his belt, his body language broadcasting authority and suspicion in equal measure. Eleanor didn't move. She knew this dance. Stay calm, stay polite, provide what they ask for, don't give them a reason. The problem was, they didn't need a reason. They never had. Carter reached her window and leaned down. Ma'am, you need to step out of that vehicle right now. Eleanor kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. Officer, I'm legally parked in a visitor space. Is there a specific issue? Carter straightened slightly, his hand still resting on her door license and registration. Now the demand came without explanation, no greeting, no statement of probable cause, just the expectation of immediate compliance. Eleanor reached slowly toward her center console. I'm retrieving my registration from the glove compartment. My license is in my purse on the passenger seat. She produced her registration. First, current tags, her name clearly printed. She placed it on her lap, then reached for her purse. My license is in the side pocket. I'm reaching for it now. Slowly, Carter said. Eleanor handed both documents through the window. Carter examined them with exaggerated care, finding nothing wrong, finding nothing that justified his presence. What's your business at this school, he asked. I'm picking up my niece Maya Brooks, 3rd grade. Eleanor gestured toward the placard. I have a visitor permit issued by the front office 20 minutes ago. Carter's eyes flicked to the placard but didn't linger. Lot of complaints about unauthorized vehicles. Need to verify. You have a reason to be here. I just showed you my reason. The permit lists. Everything required. Everything is in order. Doesn't prove you're supposed to be here. Behind Carter, Principal Margaret Hill crossed the parking lot with purposeful strides. She'd been watching from the entrance, Officer James Carter. Principal Margaret Hill's smile was tight. Thank you for responding so quickly. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. I did not realize anyone had called you. Hill turned to her with practiced concern. We've had issues this semester with unauthorized pickups. Our protocol requires verification of anyone. We do not immediately recognize the statement was carefully worded, but Eleanor Brooks had been picking up Maya for 6 months. This was not about recognition. I am on Maya's authorized pickup list, Eleanor said evenly. I have been picking her up every Tuesday since May. You can verify that in your attendance records. Hill consulted her clipboard. I will need to see identification. Eleanor had already provided ID to read. Now she was being asked to get another hoop. She handed her license to Hill, who studied it with theatrical thoroughness. Everything matched this. Shows you live at the same address as the child's mother, Hill said. But our records indicate that only Mrs. Samantha Brooks and Mr. Robert Brooks are authorized for pickup. That is incorrect. Eleanor's voice remained steady. I was added to the list in September. If your records do not reflect that, it is an administrative error on your end. Laura Simmons spoke up for the first time. The permit says she is authorized, Mrs. Helen Parker would not have issued it otherwise. Carter shot her a look. Simmons Hill's jaw tightened. Mrs. Parker may not have checked thoroughly. We need to verify with Mrs. Brooks directly before allowing pickup. Samantha is in surgery. She is unreachable for the next 4 hours. Maya is expecting me, as she has every Tuesday, may I? And then perhaps you should have coordinated more carefully. Hill's tone took on an edge. Eleanor felt the familiar heat rising. Other parents had slowed their approach, sensing drama. A few had phones out, recording. Eleanor straightened. Am I being detained, or am I free to go? The question was deliberate, precise, the kind of language that came from knowing how these situations were supposed to work. Carter's expression hardened. You are trespassing if you do not leave voluntarily. You will be removed on what grounds? Eleanor's voice remained level. I have written authorization. I have provided identification. This is unlawful detention. The word unlawful hung in the air. Not unfair, not wrong. Unlawful. a term with specific legal meaning. Simmons shifted uncomfortably. James, maybe we should— I have got this. Carter snapped. A teacher, Miss Margaret Turner, appeared near the entrance, watching the encounter with troubled eyes, like she wanted to intervene but could not. Hill stepped closer. Mrs. Brooks, until we can confirm your authorization with Mrs. Brooks. Directly, you need to vacate school property. Samantha gave consent in writing. Your staff issued me a permit. You cannot retroactively revoke access. We are simply asking you to return when we can verify. Hill's voice remained pleasant. Professional distance. Carter leaned in. Ma'am, step out of the vehicle, hands where I can see them. Eleanor reached for her phone. I am going to document this interaction. She activated the voice recording app, placing the phone on her dashboard. Red dot pulsing timestamp running. Carter's face flushed. Turn that off. I have the right to record a public official performing their duties. Eleanor's voice was calm. This parking lot is public space. Recording is legal. She chosen her words carefully, simply stating facts. I said turn it off. Carter reached through the window toward the phone. Eleanor pulled the phone back toward her chest. The movement was defensive. Her arm brushed against his hand, barely contact, but Carter recoiled as if struck. Did you just hit an officer? That is assault. Eleanor's eyes widened. I did not strike you. You reached into my vehicle. I moved my property away. Multiple witnesses can confirm that, but Carter had already keyed his radio dispatch unit, 14 code 10 at Maplewood Academy. Subject refusing to comply. Possible 415 and 243 requesting backup 415. Disturbing the peace 243 battery on an officer. Both misdemeanors, both fabricated. More parents had gathered, forming a semicircle. Some looked concerned. Several were recording a woman in yoga pants. Sarah Jones pushed forward. Margaret Hill, what's going on? I know this woman. She picks up Maya all the time. Hill turned her mask, slipping Mrs. Jones, unless you have relevant information. Step back. I do have relevant information. Sarah gestured at Eleanor. She has a permit. She is here every Tuesday. This is ridiculous. Carter stepped towards Sarah. Ma'am, if you interfere, you will be cited for obstruction. Step back. Sarah retreated, but her phone stayed up. Eleanor sat perfectly still, hands on the wheel. She had done everything right, followed every rule, and somehow she was still the one being treated like a criminal. Laura Simmons approached Carter, speaking low. James, I do not think she actually hit you. The body cam will show her refusing to comply. Carter's voice was loud enough to hear. That is all it needs to show. In the distance, sirens approached the window, for de-escalation was closing. Eleanor kept her voice steady, projecting toward witnesses for the record. I have not refused any lawful order. I have provided identification. I have explained my authorized purpose. I am not resisting. What I am doing is exercising my constitutional right to document this encounter and to question the legal basis for my detention. Miss Turner stepped forward, approaching Hill. Principal. Hill, I have seen this woman pick up Maya many times. She is definitely on the approved list. Hill's expression hardened. Miss Turner, returned to your classroom. Now, the teacher retreated, casting one more troubled glance at Eleanor. A second cruiser pulled in, lights flashing. Sergeant Daniel Harris, an older man with graying hair, sharp eyes, and patrol experience, emerged. Practiced eyes assessing the scene. What's the situation? Harris's voice was neutral. Carter straightened. Subject parked unauthorized, refused to leave, assaulted me when I attempted to secure evidence. Eleanor spoke before Harris could respond. That is false. I am parked legally with a valid permit. I have not assaulted anyone. Officer James Carter reached into my vehicle. I moved my phone away. That is not assault. Harris looked between them. Ma'am, you have identification. I have already provided it. Eleanor gestured at her documents in Carter's hand. Everything is in order. No warrants valid. License authorized permit. Harris examined the documents, then radio dispatch. Confirmation came back clean. Record address matched. For a moment, Eleanor hoped Harris might be reasonable. Then Hill stepped in. Sergeant, our policy requires we verify pickups with the parent directly. When there is any question, this woman has been asked to leave, she has refused. That is not accurate. Eleanor's voice remained controlled. I explained that Mrs. Brooks is in surgery. I offered to wait. What I refused was leaving immediately, which would mean Maya has no one to pick her up. Harris looked at Hill. Is the child's mother unreachable? I have no way of knowing that. Hill's arms crossed. Our records show specific individuals, and until we verify, she needs to leave. Harris turned back, ma'am, until this gets sorted out. You will need to come with us. Am I under arrest? Detained pending verification on what charge? Trespassing and battery on a peace officer. Eleanor's breath caught. She'd seen it coming, but hearing it officially still felt like being punched. I want to see the basis for those charges. You assaulted me, Carter's voice carried. Everyone saw it. Multiple witnesses will testify that I did not. This is a false arrest, but the machinery was already in motion. Backup had arrived, witnesses were recording, Hill was making calls, and Eleanor was about to be removed from her car in front of a school full of children, including her niece, Laura Simmons. Move to the passenger side of Eleanor's vehicle. Ma'am, it will be easier if you just cooperate. Eleanor turned to look at her. I am cooperating. I am asking that procedure be followed correctly. Carter yanked open Eleanor's door. Out now. Eleanor stepped out slowly, keeping her hands visible at shoulder height. She knew sudden movements could be weaponized. Later, the parking lot had gone quiet dismissal. Chaos, children's laughter, parents calling car doors replaced by unnatural stillness. Everyone was watching. Parents had stopped mid-stride, forming a loose circle. Some clutched their children tighter, others pulled out phones. Most just looked curious, the way people slow down for highway accidents. Principal Margaret Hill positioned herself strategically, addressing the audience. Everyone please move along. This is a security matter. We need to keep the pickup area clear. Her voice carried practiced authority, a performance. See how seriously we take safety, but no one moved. Sarah Jones pushed through the crowd yoga mat under one arm. Hill. This is absurd. I have seen this woman here dozens of times. She picks up Maya every Tuesday. Hill's smile tightened. Mrs. Jones, unless you have direct knowledge of the authorization issue. Step back. Sarah gestured at Eleanor. I do have direct knowledge. I have watched her with Maya. That child runs to her aunt like she is the highlight of her day. This is harassment. Carter stepped towards Sarah, one hand raised, ma'am. Final warning, interfere again, and you will be cited for obstruction. Sarah stepped back, but kept her phone raised. Recording, another parent called out a white man in a business suit. Officer. She has got a valid permit. What is the actual problem? Carter turns, scanning for the speaker. The problem is trespassing and assault on an officer. Unless you witness those specific events, you have nothing relevant to contribute. The man lowered his gaze, stayed silent. That is how it worked? The uniform carried authority that did not need justification. Miss Turner appeared at the crowd as he edged, having walked her class outside. She saw Eleanor with hands raised, saw Carter's aggressive posture, and her face paled. She approached Hill carefully. Principal Hill, I need to speak with you, Mrs. Brooks has been on our approved list since May. I have personally checked her ID at least 20 times. Hill turned, expression hardening. Miss Turner returned to your students, but she is telling the truth. Miss Turner. Hill's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Your contract comes up for renewal in June. Consider whether inserting yourself into matters outside your purview is wise. The threat was clear. Miss Turner's hands trembled. She glanced at Eleanor, apology in her eyes, then retreated. Eleanor had heard the exchange. She filed it away. Another witness intimidated into silence. Harris stepped forward with a notepad. Ma'am, I need to document your property before transport. Empty your pockets. Eleanor complied slowly. A tissue, a hair tie. 17 cents. She placed each item on the hood with deliberate care. Harris retrieved her purse and phone inventory and contents, while Simmons took notes, credit cards, driver's license, a small notebook, $43. A photo of Maya, grinning gap-toothed. Carter held up the notebook. What's this? Notes, Eleanor said simply about what Aaron's appointments things. I need to remember. Carter flipped through the pages. They were filled with neat handwriting dates, times, brief notations, nothing incriminating, but the precision was notable, organized, methodical. He closed it and added it to an evidence bag we will hold on to. This on what grounds? Eleanor's voice remained calm. That notebook contains nothing related to your charges. Seizing it is unlawful. It is evidence, Carter said, of what crime specifically? He did not answer, just sealed the bag. The school bell rang. Children began pouring out a tide of small bodies and high voices. Teachers tried to direct them, but several students had spotted the police and were pointing. Eleanor's chest tightened. Somewhere in that crowd was Maya. She turned to Harris. My niece is about to come outside. She is 9 years old. Can we move somewhere less visible? Harris's expression did not change. Procedure requires that we complete documentation on site, then at least let someone tell her. Not our concern. And then it happened. Maya emerged from the side entrance, yellow backpack, bouncing braids tied with ribbons. She scanned the lot for Eleanor's car. Her eyes found the police cruisers first, then Eleanor. Hands raised, officers surrounding her. Maya's face crumbled. She dropped her backpack and ran on. Aunt Elle. Her voice carried high and terrified Aunt Elle. Aunt Elle, what are they doing? Miss Turner moved to intercept, but Maya was fast. She dodged between parents, heading for Eleanor. Simmons stepped into her path, arms outstretched. Sweetie, you need to stay back. That is my... Aunt Maya tried to push past. They are hurting her. Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos. Maya, baby. I am okay. This is a misunderstanding. Go back to Miss Turner. No. Maya's sobs grew louder. I want to go home with you. You promised. The anguish in her niece's voice cracked something in Eleanor's composure. Her hands started to lower to reach for Maya, but Carter barked immediately, hands up. Keep your hands where I can see them. Eleanor forced her hands back up. Maya. Please go with Miss Turner. I will call your mom. Miss Turner caught up gently, taking Maya by the shoulders. Come on, sweetie. We will call your mom together. Maya fought her grip. They cannot take her. She did not do anything wrong. The crowd's energy shifted. What had been curiosity now carried discomfort. Several parents exchanged glances, watching a 9-year-old, breakdown watching her. Terror made the abstract concrete. Sarah Jones spoke again louder. Officer, you are traumatizing this child. Is that necessary? Carter did not look at her. Maybe the aunt should have thought about that before assaulting an officer. The lie stated with casual confidence hung in the air. Several parents who had witnessed the actual interaction shifted uncomfortably, but no one else spoke up. Miss Turner finally guided Maya back toward the building, her sobs audible from 30 feet away. Eleanor stood motionless, watching her niece disappear. She blinked hard, forced even. Breathing emotion was ammunition. Sergeant Daniel Harris, having arrived earlier in an unmarked sedan, approached Carter. First, speaking in a low voice, "Walk me through it." Carter gestured at Eleanor. Trespassing complaint from school administration. Subject refused to leave when ordered, became aggressive when I attempted to secure her recording device. Struck my hand. That is 2 and 43. Battery on a peace officer. Harris's eyes moved to Eleanor. Ma'am. Is that accurate? Eleanor kept her voice steady, projecting just loud enough for nearby witnesses to hear. No, I was legally parked with valid authorization. I exercised my right to record our interaction. Officer James Carter reached into my vehicle to forcibly take my phone. I withdrew my property. That is not battery. That is protecting myself from unlawful seizure. Harris studied her for a long moment, the way she spoke, the precision of her language, the complete absence of panic or pleading. Most people in this situation would be emotional defensive. This woman was presenting a legal argument like she was filing a brief. He turned to Laura Simmons. You witnessed the alleged assault. Simmons hesitated. I saw Officer James Carter reach toward her phone. She pulled it back. Their hands may have touched, but I would not characterize it as did she. Strike him or not? No, sir. Not in my observation. Carter's face flushed. She made aggressive contact. The body cam will show. The body cam will show exactly what happened, Harris interrupted. Which is why we are going to document everything properly before transport. He pulled out his own notepad, flipping to a fresh page. This was his specialty, transforming messy street encounters into clean reports that would hold up under scrutiny. Every I dotted, every T crossed, Harris addressed Eleanor directly. Ma'am, for the record, what is your full name and date of birth? Eleanor Marie Brooks, November 12th, 1976. Current address, 4127 Maplewood Drive, Apartment 4B. Harris wrote without looking up. Occupation. Eleanor paused for just a fraction of a second. Public service. Harris's pen stopped moving. He looked up. Most people said, teacher, nurse, office worker. Something specific. Public service was deliberate. Vagueness. Can you be more specific? I work for the county. Eleanor's tone remained even. My supervisor's contact information is in my phone, which Officer James Carter seized. We will verify that during processing, Harris made a note. What brings you to Maplewood Academy today? Picking up my niece as I have done every Tuesday for 6 months, and you have authorization for that. Eleanor gestured toward her car. The visitor permit on my dashboard lists everything required. Student name, parent authorization, purpose of visit. Your officers have already examined it twice. Everything is in order. Harris walked to Eleanor's car. Studying the placard through the windshield, he photographed it with his phone, then checked the school's visitor log on his radio dispatch. Confirmed Eleanor's name appeared in the system, marked as authorized. He returned to where Eleanor stood. The permit appears valid, but Principal Hill states you were asked to leave and refused. That is the trespass complaint. I was asked to leave based on an administrative error. Their records not reflecting my authorized status, I offered to wait. While they verified with my sister, what I refused was vacating immediately, which would have left my 9-year-old niece with no pickup. Hill stepped forward, having overheard Sergeant, our policy is clear when there is any question about authorization. We require the individual to leave and return after verification. School safety takes precedence even when the individual has documentation. Showing authorization, documentation can be forged. Eleanor interrupted her voice, carrying a new edge. Are you suggesting I forged a permit issued by your own front office 20 minutes ago, Mrs.? Porter can confirm she gave it to me herself. Hill's expression tightened. I am suggesting that when staff express concerns about security, we take those concerns seriously. What staff expressed concerns? Eleanor's question was precise. Mrs. Porter issued my permit without hesitation, Mr. Rodriguez confirmed. I am on the approved list. Officer James Carter arrived before I even entered the building. Who called this in? This in Harris consulted his notes. Dispatch log shows the call came in at 15:10 p.m. Caller identified as school administration, reporting an unauthorized individual in the visitor lot. Eleanor's eyes moved to Hill at 3:10 p.m. I was still inside the front office getting my permit. I did not return to my car until 3:12 p.m. How did someone report me as unauthorized before I even reached the parking lot? The discrepancy hung in the air. Several witnesses exchanged glances. Sarah Jones's phone was definitely still recording. Holloway recovered quickly. Security staff monitor the lot continuously. They may have observed you earlier and radioed concerns before you obtained the permit, so your security called police on me before verifying whether I had authorization. Eleanor's tone remained calm, but the implication was clear. That is profiling, that is caution. Harris stepped between them. This was getting away from him. The more Eleanor talked, the more holes appeared in the narrative, and witnesses were documenting all of it, ma'am. Here is the situation. We have a trespass complaint from the property owner. We have an allegation of battery on an officer. Whether those allegations hold up is for the courts to decide. But right now, we are taking you in for processing. Eleanor looked directly at him, Sergeant. You know, this is pretextual. The timeline does not support the trespass claim. The body cam will not support the battery allegation. You are arresting me for asking questions and refusing to be intimidated. I am arresting you based on complaints filed by the school administration and one of my officers. Then I am formally requesting your name and badge number for my complaint to Internal Affairs." The words landed like a stone in still water. Complaints were serious business. They triggered reviews, scrutiny, paperwork that could haunt an officer's career. Harris's expression did not change. Sergeant Daniel Harris, badge 2847. "You will receive a copy of the incident report with all relevant information," he gestured to Simmons. "Officer Laura Simmons, please escort Miss Brooks to the vehicle. Use minimum necessary restraint." Simmons approached, handcuffs in hand. "And I need you to turn around, hands behind your back." Eleanor complied, her movements slow and deliberate. "I am not resisting. I want that stated clearly for the record," noted Simmons, secured the handcuffs, checking the tightness, not as aggressive as Carter would have been, just tight enough to prevent escape as Simmons guided her toward the cruiser. Eleanor spoke over her shoulder to Harris. "Sergeant, one more thing. This interaction will be reviewed by people with authority over your department. I suggest you ensure your report is scrupulously accurate." The phrasing was unusual, not threatening, not pleading, just advising, like someone who understood how institutional reviews worked. Harris watched her settle into the back of the cruiser. Something was not adding up. The way she spoke, her composure, the specific legal terms she deployed, and that comment about people with authority. He turned to Carter. "You are sure about the battery allegation, because if the body cam contradicts your statement, we have got a problem." Carter's jaw set stubbornly. She made contact. "That is battery, the cam will show." She was aggressive and non-compliant. It better. Harris pulled out his phone, making a note to review the footage personally before the report was finalized, because something told him. This woman knew exactly what she was doing in the cruiser. Eleanor sat with her hands cuffed behind her, watching through the window as parents collected their children and drove away. Most had already forgotten her face by tomorrow. This would be gossip by next week, barely remembered, but the footage would remain uploaded to servers, shared across platforms, cached in ways that could not be erased, and somewhere in that digital record is the truth that would eventually surface. She just had to survive long enough to present it. The cruiser pulled away from Maplewood Academy at 3:50 p.m. Eleanor sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind her, the metal digging into her wrists. Simmons drove Carter Road passenger, occasionally glancing back through the partition. The vinyl seat smelled of decades of arrested people. Eleanor kept her breathing steady, eyes forward. Carter turned in his seat. "You know what happens when people resist. Things get worse." Eleanor did not respond. Engaging would only provide ammunition. Silent treatment now. Carter's voice carried mockery. "Let's see how smart you sound after processing." Simmons glanced at him. "James, leave it." The drive took 12 minutes. Eleanor watched familiar streets pass her neighborhood, her city now seen through a cage. They pulled into the station's rear bay at 3:59 p.m. Eleanor noted the time automatically. Documentation mattered. The booking area was fluorescent, bright and sterile, gray walls scuffed, linoleum metal benches bolted to the floor. A desk sergeant sat behind reinforced glass. Simmons helped Eleanor out carefully. "Watch your head." "Thank you," Eleanor said. They approached the desk. The sergeant nameplate read. Thomas Reed looked up. "What have we got?" Carter slid paperwork across. "Trespassing battery on a peace officer. Subject non-compliant at scene." Reed scanned the forms, then looked at Eleanor. His expression was professionally neutral. "Ma'am." "Full name?" "Eleanor Marie Brooks. Date of birth?" "November 15th, 1976. Reed typed, then paused. His eyes moved from the screen to Eleanor's face. Something had caught his attention. "Address 412. Pinecrest Drive, apartment 4B, Moore." Typing. Another pause longer. Reed's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He clicked through several screens, reading carefully. Carter leaned against the counter. "Problem?" "Reed, no problem." Reed's voice remained neutral. "Ma'am, occupation?" Eleanor maintained eye contact. "Public service, county employee." Reed's eyebrows rose fractionally. He made a note, then reached for a clipboard. "I need to inventory your property," Reed said. "Officer Simmons, bring her effects." Simmons placed Eleanor's purse, phone, and keys in a plastic tray. Reed documented each item methodically: driver's license, credit cards, insurance card, cash. One notebook. He opened the notebook, flipping through pages. His eyes scanned the neat handwriting, dates, appointments, case references. In careful shorthand, Reed looked up. "You keep detailed records?" "It is necessary for my work," Eleanor replied. "Deal with complicated schedules." I can see that Reed closed the notebook carefully, like someone who suspected these pages might matter. Later, he pulled out a booking form. "Have you been arrested before?" "No." "Any medical conditions, medications, injuries?" "No medical conditions." Officer Reed, handcuffs are unnecessarily tight. I would like that documented. Reed made a note. He gestured to Simmons. "Check the cuff tightness." Simmons examined Eleanor's wrist. "They are snug, but not cutting circulation." I said, "Unnecessarily tight?" "I said tight," Eleanor clarified. "Not dangerous, just excessive, given that I am fully compliant." Reed said that down verbatim. Most arrestees complained about pain this woman was making. Technical observations about appropriate force? "You have the right to one phone call," Reed said. "Do you want that now?" "Yes, I need to reach my sister. She is in surgery at Riverside Medical Center." Reed slid a phone across 5 minutes. Eleanor recited the hospital's number from memory. She explained the situation calmly to the operator, asking them to inform Samantha Brooks that her daughter needed pickup and her sister was in custody. No emotion, no drama, just information delivered efficiently. When she hung up, Reed was watching her. "You are very composed for someone facing criminal charges." "Panic does not help," Eleanor said. "And I have not committed any crime," Carter interjected. "You assaulted me. That is a crime." Eleanor turned to face him. "I withdrew my property when you reached into my vehicle without probable cause. Multiple witnesses, observe the body cam, will confirm. I made no aggressive contact. What you are describing is a false arrest." The precision of her response made Reed's eyes narrow. He addressed Carter. "The body cam footage has been uploaded." "Standard upload," Carter said. "It will show everything. I am sure it will." Reed made another note then to Eleanor. "You mentioned a complaint. Do you want a file now?" After, Eleanor said, "I want legal representation present, but I am stating for the record that this arrest is retaliatory. I filed a Title VI complaint with the school district 3 weeks ago regarding discriminatory treatment. Today's incident is directly related." Reed's pen stopped. Title VI. Complaints were federal civil rights matters. They had teeth. You filed with the school district. Certified mail received October 5th. Eleanor confirmed tracking number and correspondence are in my phone, which has been seized. I am requesting all my property be preserved as evidence. Simmons shifted James. "Did you know about a prior complaint?" Carter's face flushed. "Does not matter. She committed a crime today." Reed set down his pen. "Actually, it might matter, ma'am. Who did you file with the superintendent's office?" Eleanor said. "Copies sent to Principal Margaret Hill and School Board member Victor Thompson. Nature of the complaint: systematic harassment during authorized visits." Eleanor replied, being stopped repeatedly despite proper documentation of pattern spanning 6 months. Reed wrote quickly. This was no longer simple trespassing. If there was documented harassment, and then police were called, that looked like retaliation. Sergeant Daniel Harris. "I need to notify my supervisor about this booking." Carter straightened. "It is standard processing. Why loop in supervision?" Sergeant Thomas Reed met his gaze. "Because this arrest may have complicated implications, I am not signing off until everything is properly documented." He turned to Eleanor Brooks. "Ma'am, you will be held until booking is complete. Do you understand your rights?" "I do," Eleanor said. "And I am invoking my right to remain silent until I have counsel." Reed nodded. Smart knew when to stop talking. Officer Laura Simmons, escort Miss Brooks to holding cell 3 as they walked away. Reed called after them, Miss Brooks, you requested counsel. Since you are in custody, a duty attorney will be sent. Someone should be here within 2 hours. Thank you, Sergeant Reed watched her disappear. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. This is Sergeant Reed, booking I need. Lieutenant Laura Bennett, immediately. We may have a situation. Holding cell 3 was 8 feet by 10 concrete walls painted institutional beige, a metal bench bolted to one side, a toilet in the corner with no privacy screen. The fluorescent light overhead hummed constantly, a mosquito whine that never stopped. Eleanor sat on the bench, hands finally uncuffed. She rubbed her wrists where the metal had left red marks, not deep enough to bruise badly, but visible. She committed the details to memory, another piece of documentation. The cell smelled of disinfectant and something else. Desperation, maybe fear absorbed into concrete over decades. She checked her internal clock, 4:23 p.m. Booking had taken 24 minutes. Reed had said the public defender would arrive within 2 hours, which meant 6:00 p.m. at the earliest. Samantha Brooks would have gotten the message by now. Maya Brooks was probably with a neighbor or still at school with staff. Her niece's terrified face kept replaying in her mind, the way Maya had screamed, the way she tried to run to Eleanor, despite the uniforms blocking her path. 9 years old, and learning that authority did not always mean safety. Footsteps approached in the quarter. Eleanor looked up as a figure appeared at the cell bars, not Simmons or Reed, but a different officer, younger, muscular build. His nameplate read Stevens. He studied her through the bars. So you are the one who thinks she can assault cops and walk away. Eleanor did not respond. She had invoked her right to silence. Anything she said now could be twisted. Stevens unlocked the cell door and stepped inside. I asked you a question. I've invoked my right to remain silent until counsel is present. That is cute. Stevens moved closer, using his size to intimidate you. Think lawyers are going to save you? You put your hands on Carter, that is a felony. Eleanor remained, seated, keeping her posture neutral. I made no aggressive contact with Officer James Carter. The body cam footage will confirm that. Body cam. Stevens laughed. You know how many times body cam footage gets corrupted? Equipment malfunctions, files accidentally deleted. Happens all the time. Eleanor's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. Tampering with evidence is a federal crime. Who said anything about tampering? Stevens leaned against the wall, blocking the cell door. I am just saying, technology fails. Meanwhile, you have got 2 officers who witnessed you get violent, their word against yours. He was fishing. Stevens was trying to provoke a reaction or get her to say something useful for their case. Eleanor Brooks met his gaze steadily. I am not having this conversation without legal representation. Stevens pushed off the wall, taking 2 steps closer. Stand up when I am talking to you. I do not have to stand. I'm complying with all lawful orders. If you have a legitimate reason for me to stand, state it clearly. His face flushed. I said, stand up. Eleanor remained seated. This was a test. See if she would comply with arbitrary commands. Establish dominance, maybe provoke her into something they could call resisting, unless there is a security reason. I am going to remain seated. I am not required to stand simply because you have given an order without legal basis. Stevens moved fast. He grabbed her upper arm, yanking her to her feet with unnecessary force. Eleanor's shoulder wrenched, not dislocated, but painful. She did not pull away, did not struggle, but she did speak clearly, projecting her voice toward the corridor where other cells might have occupants. Officer Stevens is using excessive force. I am not resisting. There are visible marks on my arm where he grabbed me. Shut up, Stevens hissed. He shoved her back against the wall, not hard enough to cause serious injury, but hard enough to hurt Eleanor's back, hit concrete. She kept her hands visible at her sides, palms open. Every instinct screamed at her to defend herself, to use the training she had. But that would only make things worse. I am not resisting. You are assaulting a compliant detainee. This interaction is being documented by who? Stevens' face was inches from hers. You think anyone cares? What happens in here? A voice came from the corridor. I care. Stephen spun. Lieutenant Laura Bennett, a woman in her late 40s with dark hair streaked with gray, pulled back in a tight bun. Rigid posture in a crisp uniform, stood outside the cell, her expression unreadable. Officer Stevens, step away from the detainee. Stevens released Eleanor and backed toward the cell door. Lieutenant, you were just leaving. Bennett interrupted report to Sergeant Peterson. Tell him I want a copy of your service record on my desk in 10 minutes. Ma'am, this woman assaulted out now. Stevens left his boots heavy against the linoleum. Bennett waited until the sound faded, then turned her attention to Eleanor. Miss Brooks, are you injured? Eleanor rotated her shoulder carefully, bruised but nothing requiring medical attention. You want to file a complaint about Officer Stevens' conduct? Yes, but I'm waiting for legal counsel before making any formal statements. Bennett nodded slowly. Smart, she consulted a tablet she had been carrying. I reviewed your booking information. You filed a Title VI complaint 3 weeks ago today. You were arrested at the location of that complaint that is concerning timing. Eleanor said nothing. Waiting to see where this was going, Eleanor Brooks listened carefully. I also reviewed the dispatch log. The 911 call came in at 15:10. You obtained your visitor permit at 15:12. Someone called police before verifying your authorization status. That suggests premeditation. Eleanor said carefully, someone wanted police presence, regardless of whether I had a legitimate reason to be there. Lieutenant Bennett's expression remained neutral. That is one interpretation. Another is that security was being cautious. Cautious would be verifying first, then calling if there was an actual problem. Calling first suggests the goal was not verification. It was removal. Bennett's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but acknowledgement. You are very articulate for someone who works in public service. My job requires clear communication. I am sure it does. Bennett made a note on her tablet. The public defender's office has been notified someone should be here by 6. Until then, you will remain in this cell. I am instructing the officers to observe through the window only. No one enters without my authorization. Thank you, Eleanor said. May I ask, how did you know to come down here? Sergeant Peterson flagged your booking as potentially complicated. When the name came through our system, it triggered some alerts. She paused. You have made an impression on people. I have tried to do my job ethically. Sometimes that creates friction. Clearly. Bennett closed her tablet. One more thing, Mrs. Brooks. Whatever you are doing, whatever game you think you are playing, be careful. Not everyone on this force is interested in following the rules. I have noticed. Bennett left without another word. The cell door clanged shut, the lock engaging with mechanical finality. Eleanor sat back down on the bench, her shoulder throbbing where Stevens had grabbed her arm. She rolled it slowly, testing the range of motion, painful but functional. She had had worse. The encounter had confirmed something she had suspected: there were fault lines in the department. Peterson had flagged her case. Bennett had intervened. Not everyone was aligned with Carter's approach. That meant leverage if she played this correctly. Voices drifted from another cell, a woman crying softly, another voice trying to comfort her. Eleanor wondered how many people sat in cells like this one, waiting for justice that moved too slowly or never came at all. She leaned back against the cold concrete, her body tired, but her mind stayed sharp, cataloging, documenting, building the case she would present when the time came. Stevens' assault would be added to the list, the timing of the 911 call, Bennett's admission that the booking had triggered system alerts. Peterson's careful documentation, Simmons' reluctance to support Carter's version. Each piece was small, but together they formed a pattern. And patterns were exactly what she needed. Footsteps approached again, a different rhythm. A woman in a gray pantsuit appeared at the cell bars, carrying a leather briefcase. Early 30s, sharp eyes, dark hair pulled into a professional twist. Miss Brooks, her voice was crisp. I am Naomi Parker from the Public Defender's Office. I am here to represent you. Eleanor stood moving to the bars. "Thank you for coming." Parker pulled out a notepad. "I have reviewed the preliminary charges trespassing and battery on a peace officer, but Sergeant Peterson's notes mention a prior title. 55-28. Naomi Parker leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Walk me through everything from the beginning." Eleanor Brooks took a breath. This was it, the moment to start building her defense, to transform scattered pieces into a coherent narrative that would withstand scrutiny. 3 weeks ago, I filed a formal complaint with the Maplewood School District regarding systematic harassment. Naomi Parker sat across from Eleanor in the attorney consultation room. A windowless box with a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 plastic chairs. She had spread her notes across the Surface Pen-poised recording device, visible between them. "Let me make sure I understand the timeline," Parker said. "You arrived at Maplewood Academy at 2:52 p.m. Went to the front office. Mrs. Helen Parker issued your visitor permit at 3:17 p.m. and you returned to your car at 3:12. Officers arrived at 3:14. Eleanor nodded. "That is correct." But according to the dispatch log, Parker consulted her notes. The 911 call came in at 3:10, which means someone reported you as an unauthorized individual before you had even been back in your car for 60 seconds. "Someone reported me before verifying whether I had authorization." Eleanor said, her tone calm, precise. "That is not security protocol, that is targeting," Parker made a note. "Principal Margaret Hill claims security staff observed you in the lot earlier and had concerns before you obtained the permit." "I pulled into the lot at 2:52, Eleanor said. "I was inside the building obtaining authorization until 3:09. If security had concerns during those 9 minutes, they could have walked 20 feet to the front office and asked Mrs. Parker directly. Instead, they called 911, which suggests they were not interested in verification," Eleanor finished. "They were interested in creating a police presence." Parker leaned back, studying Eleanor carefully. "Ms. Brooks, I have been a public defender for 7 years. I have seen every kind of client. Most people in your situation are either scared, angry, or both. You are neither. You are methodical. Fear and anger cloud judgment. I need clarity right now." "That is the thing," Eleanor said. Parker tapped her pen against her notepad. "You talk like someone who has been through legal proceedings before, not as a defendant, but as someone who understands how cases are built." Eleanor met her gaze steadily. "I have had to learn. My job requires understanding process. Public service, yes." Parker let it drop. "All right. Let us talk about the battery allegation. Officer James Carter claims you struck his hand when he attempted to secure your recording device. What actually happened?" Eleanor spoke precisely. "I activated my phone's voice recording app and placed it on my dashboard screen, visible. Officer Carter ordered me to turn it off. I informed him that recording a public official in a public space is legal. He reached through my open window toward my phone. I pulled the phone back toward my chest, away from his reach. Our hands may have brushed during that motion, incidental contact, not aggressive, and there were witnesses, at least 15 parents. Several were recording on their own phones. Sarah Jones was particularly vocal in my defense. Miss Turner, a teacher, also witnessed the interaction." Parker wrote quickly, "Those witnesses will be crucial. But here is the problem. Officer Laura Simmons' preliminary statement supports Carter's version. She describes you as agitated and non-compliant. Officer Simmons told Sergeant Daniel Harris at the scene that she did not observe me strike anyone. I heard her say, 'Check the audio from his body cam.'" Parker's eyebrows rose. "You are confident the body cam will help your case?" "I am confident it will show the truth," Eleanor said. "Carter reached into my vehicle first. I withdrew. That is defensive action, not assault, okay? Let us assume the body cam supports your version that addresses the battery charge. But the trespassing is equally baseless, Eleanor interrupted. I had written authorization. I provided documentation. I was in a designated visitor space. The only reason I was asked to leave was administrative error. On the school's part error, they refused to correct by simply checking their own records. Parker consulted another document. Your Title VI complaint from 3 weeks ago, tell me about that. Eleanor recounted the pattern, methodically, security guard Michael Wallace stopping her repeatedly, Mr. Daniel Davis condescending questions at the parent-teacher conference being directed to inferior parking spaces, the escalating scrutiny. Despite 6 months of authorized pickups, and you documented all of this. Parker asked dates, times, names. Eleanor confirmed, I submitted a formal complaint via certified mail. Tracking shows. It was signed for by the superintendent's office on October 5th. That is unusually thorough documentation for a routine complaint, I believe, in having evidence to support claims. Eleanor said simply, Parker made more notes, then looked up. Here is what I am seeing. Strong timeline evidence suggesting premeditation, multiple witnesses to the actual incident, a prior complaint establishing a pattern of harassment, and body cam footage that should contradict the officer's statements. So what is the problem? The problem is politics, Parker said. The school district has influence, the police union will protect its officers, and you are, forgive me for being blunt, a single black woman. Going up against institutional power, even with good evidence, this could get ugly. It is already ugly. My 9-year-old niece watched me get arrested. She is traumatized. Parker's expression softened. I understand, and we will fight this. But I need you to understand the stakes they are going to come at you. You hard background checks, character assassination. They will look for anything to discredit you. Let them look. I have nothing to hide. Everyone has something, Parker said. The question is whether it is relevant. A knock interrupted them. Sergeant Thomas Reed appeared in the doorway. Miss Parker, we have pulled the body cam footage. It is available for review if you would like to see it before arraignment. Parker stood absolutely. Miss Brooks, I will be back in 30 minutes after she left. Eleanor sat alone in the consultation room. The walls were thin enough to hear activity in the quarter. Officers talking, phones ringing, the constant hum of bureaucratic machinery. She closed her eyes, replaying the parking lot confrontation in her mind. Every word, every movement, the placement of witnesses, the angle of Carter's body cam when he had reached for her phone. If she was right about the camera angle, the footage would show his arm extending into her vehicle. First would show her pulling back, would prove she had made no aggressive contact. If she was wrong, if the angle had been obscured, or if the footage had been edited. This became much harder, but she had to trust the process. Trust that evidence would speak louder than lies. 23 years had taught her that truth mattered. It did not always win immediately. Sometimes it took time. Sometimes it required patience and precise documentation and refusing to give up. But it mattered. Detective Angela Reed sat in her internal affairs office, 3 monitors glowing in the dim light. It was past 7:00 p.m. Most of the building had emptied hours ago, but Peterson's call about a complicated booking had triggered her instinct, the one that told her when something was not right. She pulled up the incident report filed by Carter, standard language. Subject refused to comply with lawful orders. Subject made aggressive movements toward officer. Subject struck officer's hand during attempt to secure evidence. Then, she opened the body cam footage side by side. Watched it once at normal speed, then again at quarter speed, noting every detail. At 3:17:43, Carter's arm extended through the vehicle window. His hand reached toward the phone on the dashboard at 3:17:47. 4 seconds later, Eleanor's hand moved, pulling the phone toward her chest at 3:17:51. Carter withdrew his arm. No strike, no aggressive contact. Reed made notes. The body cam contradicted the written report in multiple ways, not interpretation differences. Clear factual discrepancies. She pulled up the 911 call audio. Listened to Principal Margaret Hill's voice clipped and certain, Maplewood County 911. What is your emergency? Hill's response, this is Principal Margaret Hill at Maplewood Academy. We have an unauthorized individual in our visitor parking lot who is refusing to leave. Is the individual threatening anyone? Not explicitly. But she has a confrontational demeanor, and we have had issues with her before. Reed paused. The recording had issues with her before that suggested a history. She pulled up the school district's complaint log through their public records portal. Eleanor Brooks's name appeared once Title VI. Complaint filed September 29th, received October 5th. Subject pattern of discriminatory treatment during authorized school visits. Reed clicked through to the complaint details. 6 months of documented incidents. Security guard Michael Wallace stopping Eleanor repeatedly, despite valid permits. Principal Hill questioning her relationship to the student teacher, Mr. Daniel Davis dismissing her presence at conferences. The complaint had been forwarded to school board member Victor Thompson. For review, his response, dated October 7th, was bureaucratically dismissive. The district takes all concerns seriously, but must balance individual accommodation with institutional security protocols. Translation. We hear you, but we are doing nothing. Reed cross-referenced the dates. Complaint filed. September 29th, received October 5th, reviewed October 7th. Eleanor arrested October 21st, exactly 14 days after the board's non-response. She made more notes. Timeline suggested retaliation. Federal civil rights law prohibited retaliating against individuals who filed discrimination complaints. If the arrest was linked to the complaint that opened serious liability. A knock on her door. Sergeant Peterson stood in the hallway, looking tired, thought. I would find you here, Peterson said. The Brooks case. Reed nodded. Walk me through your interaction with her during booking. Peterson settled into the chair across from her desk, calm, very calm. Most people getting arrested are either belligerent or scared. She was, neither answered. Questions precisely knew her rights. Invoked counsel at exactly the right moment. Anything else stand out when I pulled her name in the system. Something flagged, not a criminal flag, something else. But by the time I got through the booking screens, the alert had cleared. Reed's eyes narrowed. What kind of alert? That's the thing. Peterson spread his hands. I do not know. It was there for maybe 3 seconds. Red banner across the top of the screen. Then gone. I tried to pull it back up. Could not access it. That's unusual. That's why I called Bennett. Peterson said something about this woman is triggering system responses I have never seen before, and Carter's report does not match the body cam ad in the Title VI complaint, and we have got a mess. Reed turned back to her monitors. I am going to pull all records related to Maplewood Academy arrests for the past 2 years, see if there is a pattern you think this is not isolated. I think any time a school calls 911 before verifying authorization, it is worth investigating whether they have done it before. Peterson stood Reed. Be careful. School board members have friends in high places. You start digging into district practices, you will make enemies. I am internal affairs, Reed said. Making enemies is part of the job description after Peterson left. Reed opened a new search, all arrests within 1 mile of Maplewood Academy. Past 24 months filtered for trespassing charges. 14 results appeared. She opened each one, scanning for patterns. Case 23471, black male age 34, arrested for trespassing during school pickup charges, dropped, found to be authorized, guardian case. 23C5892, black female age 41, arrested for trespassing at school event charges, dropped, had purchased ticket case. 24C5, Hispanic male, age 28, arrested for trespassing in school. Parking lot charges dropped, was waiting for wife who worked at school. Reed felt her stomach tighten. A pattern was emerging. 14 arrests. All people of color are all at or near the school. Charges dropped in 13 cases, meaning they had been wrongful arrests. Only one case had resulted in conviction. Case 23-4. The defendant had taken a plea deal rather than fight the charges. She pulled up the school district's demographic data. Maplewood Academy, 73% white students, 4% black, 9%, Hispanic 6%. Other surrounding neighborhood, similar demographics, but 100% of the trespassing arrests were people of color. That was not random variation, that was targeting. She pulled up email logs next, using her Iowa access to request correspondence between Maplewood Academy administration and the police department. Public officials' work emails were subject to records requests. Most people forgot that the logs loaded hundreds of messages between Principal Margaret Hill and various officers. Over 2 years, she filtered for keywords security concern, unauthorized, suspicious. 47 emails appeared. Reed began reading. June 12, 2023, Hill to Officer Martinez. Security reports an individual of interest in the pickup area, black male, approximately 30s. Observing children, can you send a unit? August 3, 2020. Hill to Sergeant Harris. Another incident with non-resident. Attempting to access campus, Hispanic female claims to be picking up niece but raised concerns with staff. March 15, 2024, Hill to Officer Carter. The woman I mentioned last week returned today. Same aggressive attitude. Thought you should be aware. The March email caught Reed's attention. She checked the date against Eleanor Brooks. School visit log. Eleanor had picked up Maya on March 13th, 2 days before Hill's email to Carter. She pulled up more emails, found a thread between Hill and school board member Victor Thompson, October 8, 2024. Hill to Thompson, the title. Complaint you forwarded, the woman was here again today. Michael Wallace reports she was monitoring his movements and appeared to be documenting interactions. Should we be concerned about litigation? October 9th, 2024. Thompson to Hill, document everything. If she returns, ensure security protocols are strictly enforced. Consider coordinating with local police department if she becomes disruptive there. That was coordination between the school board and the recommendation to involve police. 12 days before Eleanor Brooks' arrest, Reed sat back processing. This wasn't just one bad arrest. It was systematic, a school administration using law enforcement to remove people they deemed problematic, and law enforcement complying without questioning whether the removals were justified. She pulled up Eleanor's visitor permit application. From today, submitted at 3:30 p.m., approved and issued at 3:10 p.m. by Mrs. Helen Parker, attendance clerk, standard. 7-minute processing time, then she pulled the 911 call time stamp, 3:10 p.m., 3 minutes after the permit was issued, someone had called police. While Eleanor was still inside the building, getting authorized, that wasn't security protocol. That was a setup. Reed began typing her preliminary report. She documented the body cam discrepancies, the email trail, the pattern of arrests, the timeline contradictions. Every piece carefully sourced, every claim backed by evidence. This would go to the Attorney General's office, maybe the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. This was bigger than one arrest, bigger than one school. This was institutional discrimination with police as enforcers. Her phone buzzed. Text from Samantha Brooks, made bail. Attorney filed motion to dismiss hearing set for Friday. 0 a.m. Reed typed back, I will have my preliminary findings ready. This case needs elevation. She looked at the screens filled with evidence. Somewhere in this mess was a woman who had been doing everything right, following rules, documenting incidents, using official channels to seek redress, and the system had responded by arresting her in front of her traumatized niece. Reed had joined Iowa because she believed in accountability, believed that good cops should be protected and bad ones removed. Cases like this reminded her why that mattered. She saved her files, backed them up to 3 separate locations. Then she began the process of formally requesting federal oversight. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Friday morning arrived with gray skies. Eleanor Brooks sat in the courthouse waiting area wearing the same blazer she'd been arrested in 3 days ago. Naomi Parker, a woman in her early 30s, with dark hair neatly pulled back, wearing a gray pantsuit with sharp eyes, sat beside her reviewing notes one final time. The motion to dismiss hearing starts in 10 minutes. Judge Alan Mitchell will preside. He is fair, but he follows procedure strictly. Eleanor nodded. She knew Alan Mitchell had worked cases alongside him for 15 years before he transferred to criminal court, but Parker didn't need to know that yet. They'll argue the charges have merit. Parker continued. We will present the body cam evidence witness statements and the timeline discrepancies. With luck, he dismisses with prejudice, and we're done. The courtroom doors opened. They entered together. Eleanor's heels clicked against marble floors. The room was smaller than she usually worked in criminal motions court designed for quick procedural hearings rather than full trials. Officer James Carter sat in the gallery, arms crossed. Beside him, Sergeant Daniel Harris whispered something that made him scowl. Principal Margaret Hill had claimed a scheduling conflict conspicuously absent. The prosecutor was a junior assistant district attorney named Daniel Wright, fresh out of law school, probably handed this case as routine work. He shuffled papers nervously. As they approached the defense table, the bailiff announced, "All rise. The Honorable Judge Alan Mitchell presiding." Mitchell entered from his chambers, late 50s, silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He settled behind the bench and reviewed the file before him. Case number 24CR8952. People v. Eleanor Brooks, motion to dismiss filed by the defense. Mr. Wright, you may proceed. Wright said, Your Honor, the people oppose dismissal. The defendant was arrested following a legitimate trespassing complaint from school administration and an assault on Officer James Carter. While the defense has raised procedural questions, the underlying conduct justifies prosecution. Mitchell made a note. Naomi Parker stood projecting confidence. Your Honor, this case should never have been filed. The so-called trespassing occurred while my client had valid authorization documented in writing. The alleged assault is contradicted by body cam footage showing Officer Carter initiating physical contact. She approached the bench with a USB drive. I have prepared a compilation of relevant evidence, body cam footage, witness statements, dispatch logs showing timeline inconsistencies. Mitchell accepted the drive, handing it to his clerk. We will review that, but first I have questions for the prosecution. Mr. Wright, the charging documents list the defendant as Eleanor Brooks' occupation public service. Can you be more specific about her employment? Wright consulted his file. The arresting officers reported she works for the county, Your Honor. No additional details were provided. The county has many departments. Which one? I do not have that information. Wright admitted the booking report lists public service without specification. Judge Alan Mitchell turned his attention to Eleanor Brooks. Miss Brooks, perhaps you can clarify for the court, what is your specific position with the county? This was it, the moment Eleanor had been waiting for. She stood slowly, meeting Mitchell's eyes. Your Honor, I serve as a circuit court judge for the 9th District. The courtroom went dead silent. Daniel Wright papers slipped from his hands, scattering across the prosecution table. Officer James Carter half rose from his seat, face draining of color. Sergeant Daniel Harris grabbed his arm, pulling him back down. Naomi Parker turned to look at Eleanor. Her expression caught between shock and vindication. She had suspected something, but not this. Mitchell's face remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped his pen. Judge Eleanor Brooks, Circuit Court? Yes, Your Honor. I have served in that capacity for 23 years. Wright found his voice, though it cracked. Your Honor, the booking report made no mention. The defendant never identified herself as... I identified myself as a county employee in public service, Eleanor interrupted. Which is accurate. I also provided my driver's license, which lists my full legal name. It is not my responsibility to ensure arresting officers conduct adequate background checks before filing charges. Mitchell set down his pen with deliberate care. Wright approached the bench. Miss Parker, you as well. The three conferred in whispers for nearly a minute. Eleanor remained standing, aware of every eye on her. Carter looked like he might be sick. Harris had his phone out, typing frantically, probably alerting his superiors. Mitchell returned to his microphone. The court will take a 15-minute recess. While I review the submitted evidence, bailiff ensure all parties remain available. He stood and exited quickly. The moment he disappeared, chaos erupted. Wright rushed from the courtroom phone, already at his ear, probably calling his supervisor to explain how he had just prosecuted a sitting judge for crimes she did not commit. Carter pushed toward the exit, but Harris blocked him. Sit down. Running makes it worse. Parker turned to Eleanor. Judge Brooks, you are a circuit court judge. I am, she replied. I did not think to mention this earlier. I wanted the evidence to speak for itself. If I had led with my title, everything after would have been viewed through that lens. This way, the facts stand independent of who I am. Parker sat down slowly. You just played the best legal card I have ever seen. But you realize this is going to explode. She was counting on it. In the gallery, Carter was arguing with Harris in harsh whispers. How was I supposed to know? You never asked, Harris hissed back. You saw a black woman and assumed that's the problem. Detective Angela Reed, a female internal affairs detective, slipped into the courtroom through the back entrance. Eleanor caught her eye. Reed nodded once, a silent communication. The IA investigation had progressed. More evidence was ready. The 15 minutes stretched to 25. When Judge Alan Mitchell returned, his expression was grave. I have reviewed the body cam footage, dispatch logs, and preliminary witness statements. Mr. Wright, does the prosecution wish to proceed with these charges? Daniel Wright stood on shaky legs. Your Honor, in light of new information, the people request time to reassess our position. New information, Mitchell's voice carried steel. Judge Brooks' identity does not change the facts. Either she committed trespassing and battery, or she did not. Does the body cam footage support the battery allegation? The footage shows contact between the defendant and Officer James Carter, but the characterization of that contact is subject to interpretation, Mitchell interrupted. His voice carried absolute authority. I have watched the footage 5 times. Officer Carter reached into Judge Brooks' vehicle. She withdrew her property. At no point did she strike, push, or make aggressive contact. There is no interpretation there, only what the camera recorded. As for the trespassing charge, Mitchell continued, Judge Brooks possessed written authorization issued by school staff. The 911 call was placed before that authorization could be verified. The sequence of events suggests the arrest was predetermined, not based on actual violations. He looked directly at Carter. Officer Carter, stand. Carter rose slowly, his uniform suddenly seeming too tight. Yes, Your Honor. Did you know Judge Brooks' identity when you arrested her? No, sir, she never did. Did you ask for identification? I took her license. Did you run a background check beyond criminal warrants? Carter hesitated. Standard procedures is to check for warrants and outstanding. Answer the question, yes or no. No, Your Honor. I did not run a full background check. Mitchell made a note. Officer Carter, you arrested a circuit court judge on false charges in front of witnesses, including a traumatized child. You filed a report that body cam footage directly contradicts. You confiscated her property without probable cause. And you did all of this without basic due diligence. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Mr. Wright, the prosecution has 30 seconds to decide whether to proceed or withdraw these charges. Wright looked at Eleanor, then at Carter, then at the evidence file. The people moved to dismiss all charges. Your Honor, with prejudice. Yes, Your Honor, with prejudice. Mitchell's gavel came down. Motion granted. All charges against Judge Eleanor Brooks were dismissed with prejudice. The defendant was free to go. He paused, then added, I am also referring this matter to the Attorney General's office for investigation into potential civil rights violations, abuse of process, and filing of false reports. This court stands in recess. The gavel struck again, final absolute. Eleanor remained standing as Mitchell exited. Around her, the courtroom erupted in whispered conversations. Parker was already on her phone, probably alerting media contacts. Reed approached the defense table. "Judge Brooks, I am Detective Angela Reed, Internal Affairs. I need to speak with you about my preliminary findings." Eleanor nodded. "I have information to share as well." Carter pushed past them toward the exit. Harris caught his arm. "Not yet. We're going straight to Internal Affairs for questioning." As they left, Eleanor heard Carter's voice cracking with desperation. "This is going to ruin me." Harris' response was quiet but clear. "You ruined yourself." The grand jury hearing room held 23 citizens in tiered seating. Eleanor sat at the witness table facing Assistant Attorney General Martin Hayes at the prosecutor's podium. "Judge Brooks, please state your occupation for the record," Hayes said. "Circuit Court Judge, 9th District, 23 years, Eleanor replied. Hayes displayed body cam footage on screens. October 21st, 1743. "What do we see?" Eleanor narrated. "Officer James Carter's arm extends into my vehicle. His hand reaches toward my phone. At 15:17:47, I pull my phone back, defensive withdrawal." Hayes paused the video. "Does Judge Brooks strike or make aggressive contact with Officer Carter?" "No," Eleanor said. Yet his report claims assault at 15:18, 12:29 seconds after this video shows the interaction ended. Let that sink in. Someone invented time that doesn't exist. A juror raised her hand. "Judge Brooks, why didn't you identify yourself? Wouldn't that have stopped everything?" Eleanor had expected this. "I made a calculated decision. If I had used my title immediately, the response would have been about my position, not the facts. I wanted to document how any citizen would be treated." "And how were you treated?" "Like a criminal," Eleanor said simply. "Despite authorization, despite compliance, despite committing no crime." Hayes called his next witness, Principal Margaret Hill. Hill entered with her attorney sitting rigidly. After taking the oath, Hayes began gently. "You called 911 at 15:10, reporting an unauthorized individual, correct?" "Yes, we take security seriously," Hill said. "Judge Brooks obtained her permit at 15:07, 3 minutes before your call." Hayes displayed the permit signed by the attendance clerk. "Why call police before verifying with your own staff?" Hill's attorney whispered to her. "Security staff had concerns about Mrs. Brooks' previous demeanor." "Not Judge Brooks," Hayes corrected gently. "But you were aware she filed a Title VI complaint 3 weeks earlier." Hayes produced the complaint. "This was sent to you directly. You forwarded it to board member Victor Thompson, expressing concern about litigation." Hill's jaw tightened. "I don't recall that specific email." Hayes displayed it on screen October 8th from Hill to Thompson. "The woman was here again today. Should we be concerned about litigation?" "You were expressing concern about Judge Brooks exercising legal rights." "I was protecting the school," Hill said. Hayes' voice gained an edge. "By calling police on someone who had done nothing wrong, who you then had arrested in front of her traumatized niece," Hill's attorney intervened. "My client followed security protocols. Protocols that resulted in 14 wrongful arrests of people of color over 2 years," Hayes countered. "All at Maplewood Academy, all dismissed. That's not security, that's discrimination." He turned to the jurors. "You have seen body cam footage contradicting the arrest report email trails, showing coordination, a pattern of targeting minority visitors, and testimony from a sitting judge subjected to this treatment, despite following every rule. Does probable cause exist to believe these defendants violated Judge Brooks' civil rights under color of law? The evidence speaks." Hill was excused quickly. Her earlier confidence had evaporated. The final witness was Officer James Carter. He entered without his uniform suspended. Pending investigation, his face drawn aged years in 3 weeks. Hayes began without preamble. Officer Carter, you filed a report stating Judge Brooks assaulted you. Do you stand by that? Carter glanced at his union representative. The situation was fluid. Yes or no? Did Judge Brooks strike you? A long pause. The room held its breath. Contact was made, Carter said. Hayes repeated, the body cam shows her pulling her phone from your reaching hand. That is defensive withdrawal, not assault. Carter's face flushed. She was non-compliant, aggressive in demeanor. How? Hayes asked. By stating her rights, by asking for probable cause, by legally recording you. She refused to cooperate. She provided ID, registration, authorization. Hayes interrupted. She answered every question. She complied with every lawful order. What she refused was to be bullied. Carter said nothing. His hands clenched. Hayes addressed the jury. Officer Carter arrested a circuit court judge on false charges, filed a report contradicted by his own body cam, coordinated with officials who had received a discrimination complaint and retaliated against a protected civil rights complainant. The law is clear. Deprivation of rights under color of authority is a federal crime. The evidence supports that charge. The foreman raised his hand. Mr. Hayes, we've heard enough. The jury would like to deliberate. Hayes nodded. The jury is excused. The grand jury deliberated for 42 minutes. Eleanor waited in a witness room with Naomi Parker, a woman in her early 30s with dark hair neatly pulled back, wearing a gray pantsuit with sharp eyes, and Detective Angela Reed, a female internal affairs detective. However this goes, you've already won, Parker said. The story's out, the patterns exposed, they'll indict. Eleanor said, the evidence is overwhelming. Reed looked up from her phone. Bennett's placing Carter on unpaid leave. The department is reviewing all Maplewood Academy arrests. About that time, a bailiff knocked. They're ready. The foreman stood holding a single sheet. On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law against Officer James Carter, we find probable cause, true bill. Eleanor's shoulders dropped slightly. On Principal Margaret Hill, probable cause exist, true bill. On school board member Victor Thompson, probable cause exist, true bill, 3 for 3. Hayes accepted the indictment documents. Thank you for your service, he said. These will be filed with Federal District Court. Arrest warrants will be issued. As jurors filed out, several looked at Eleanor. One woman mouthed, thank you, another nodded with respect. Outside media had gathered, news crews, reporters, cameras forming a gauntlet. Eleanor approached the microphones alone. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am a circuit court judge, she began. 3 weeks ago, I was arrested while picking up my 9-year-old niece, handcuffed, charged with crimes I did not commit because I filed a discrimination complaint. Today, a federal grand jury indicted 3 individuals for violating my civil rights. But this isn't just about me, it's about 47 others arrested at that school. About systematic discrimination disguised as security, about using law enforcement to punish people for being black or brown in spaces where others decided we do not belong. She paused. I am a judge. I have resources, knowledge, connections. Most victims do not. They take plea deals because they cannot afford to fight. That stops now. To everyone who has been harassed, profiled, or arrested for existing in public spaces, document everything, file complaints, demand accountability. The system will not fix itself. We have to force it. A reporter called out, Will you return to the bench? Eleanor smiled slightly. I never left. I have a full docket waiting. What about Officer Carter and Principal Hill? Another asked. They will face justice through proper channels, Eleanor said. just like any other defendants. She stepped back from the microphones. Naomi Parker, a woman in her early 30s with dark hair neatly pulled back, wearing a gray pantsuit with sharp eyes, and Detective Angela Reed, a female internal affairs detective, flanked her toward a waiting car. In the car, Eleanor leaned back, closing her eyes. 3 weeks ago, handcuffed in a parking lot. Now federal charges filed. Parker's phone buzzed. DOJ is expanding the investigation to all 7 flagged schools' federal oversight for involved districts, she said. Reed added, state legislature calling emergency hearings on school police coordination. One case, Eleanor murmured, "Look what happened because you documented everything." "Because you refused to be intimidated," Parker replied. Eleanor opened her eyes, watching the city pass. Somewhere Maya was at school. Somewhere Samantha was saving lives. Somewhere other families navigated systems designed to exclude them. "The work isn't done," Reed said. "But it started." Eleanor agreed. Monday morning arrived with autumn rain. Eleanor pushed through the courthouse doors at 7:00 a.m. Her chambers on the 4th floor felt both familiar and foreign, same desk, same files, but everything looked different now. Her clerk, David Evans, stood. "Welcome back, Your Honor," he said. Eleanor set down her briefcase. "What's on the docket?" 3 motions to suppress 2 sentencing hearings. He hesitated. And a recusal motion in State versus Martinez. Defense argues your recent experience might bias you in police misconduct cases. "Of course it does," Eleanor said. "I already drafted a response." David nodded. "Figured they'd try this." Eleanor smiled slightly. Good clerks anticipate problems. At noon, Detective Angela Reed appeared. "Your Honor, an update on the federal investigation." They moved to the private conference room. Reed spread documents across the table. DOJ released preliminary findings. Carter and Hill suspended without pay. Thompson resigned. That's the official story. "What's really happening?" Reed pulled out her tablet. Carter's union hired a crisis firm. Principal Hill was claiming she followed district policy. Victor Thompson's lawyers were negotiating a cooperation agreement. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "He is offering to testify." "That is what sources suggest," Reed said. "But here is the interesting part. When we pulled email records, several threads were heavily redacted. The school district claims technical limitations. Emails do not just disappear. Exactly." Reed displayed a partially visible message. "This is from Victor Thompson to someone whose address is blocked out." Subject line: Maplewood Protocol Implementation. The body is mostly redacted, except this fragment as discussed with redacted. The quarterly metrics justify continued coordination. Eleanor leaned forward. Quarterly metrics. That is not security language. That is performance measurement language, right? Which suggests someone was tracking something quantifiable, arrest numbers maybe? "Who has authority to redact discovery emails?" Eleanor asked. "The district superintendent's office," Reed said. "But Superintendent Park claims she never authorized it. Someone with administrative access made the decision unilaterally." Eleanor studied the partial message. "That is not how bureaucracies work. Someone gave an order. Which is why the investigation is not closed." Reed confirmed. "DOJ is expanding scope to include obstruction, but it will take months." After Reed left, Eleanor sat alone. 3 indicted, several suspended, but someone was still hiding. Someone important enough to redact federal evidence. Her phone buzzed, text from Samantha, "Can we talk tonight about Maya?" That evening, Eleanor arrived at Samantha's apartment with takeout. Maya was in her room, the door closed, music playing softly. Samantha looked exhausted. "She is having nightmares. Wakes up crying about police taking you away. The counselor says she is showing trauma response." Eleanor set down the food. I am so sorry. Do not. Samantha's voice was firm. You did not do anything wrong. But Maya does not understand that yet. She just knows people who were supposed to protect us hurt you. What does the counselor recommend? Time. Consistency. Therapy, Samantha said heavily. And maybe I keep doing pickups for a while. Until things settle. The suggestion hurt more than Eleanor expected. She had fought for that right. Now even in victory, fear was taking it away. If that is what is best for her, Eleanor said, then that is what we do. Before leaving, Eleanor knocked on Maya's door. Baby girl, can I come in? A pause. Okay. Maya sat on her bed surrounded by stuffed animals, looking smaller than her 9 years. Eleanor sat beside her carefully. I am sorry you had to see what happened, Eleanor said. That must have been scary. Maya nodded, not meeting her eyes. Are the bad police going to come back? No, baby. They are not allowed to. What they did was wrong and now they are facing consequences. But what if there are more bad police? How do you know who is safe? Maya's voice was small. Eleanor had no easy answer. The truth was complicated. That is a really smart question, she said finally. I do not have a perfect answer. But I can tell you this, bad ones do not win when we speak up. They only win when we stay silent. Maya considered this. Is that why you did not cry when they arrested you? Part of it, Eleanor admitted, but also I knew I had not done anything wrong. And people were watching. So I stayed calm, and I let the truth speak. Did the truth win? Eleanor Brooks pulled her close. Yes, baby. Eventually, the truth won. A week later, Eleanor was reviewing files when her phone rang. Unknown number. Judge Brooks, a woman's voice said, nervous. This is Mrs. Helen Parker from Maplewood Academy. Eleanor sat up straight. Mrs. Parker, hello. I need to tell you something about the day you were arrested. Parker's words rushed. Principal Margaret Hill told me to issue your permit, but first she made me call someone, a number I had never seen. She told me to report that you had arrived and were requesting access. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Do you remember the number? I wrote it down. Parker's voice dropped. The person who answered did not identify themselves, just said noted and hung up. 3 minutes later, police arrived like they were already on the way before I finished the call. Mrs. Parker, can you testify to this? A long pause. I am scared. I have a family. Principal Hill has friends. People who could make things difficult. I understand. But without witnesses, the people behind this stay hidden. I know. Parker's voice shook. That is why I called. I just need time to talk to my husband. Take the time you need, Eleanor said. But that phone number, can you send it to Detective Angela Reed? Even if you are not ready to testify, that information could be crucial. I will think about it, Parker said. I should have spoken up sooner. After the call, Eleanor sat staring at her phone. Someone had been on standby. The arrest had been orchestrated. She forwarded Parker's information to Reed. New witness may have phone number of coordination point. That evening, Eleanor locked her chambers and headed for the parking garage. The building was mostly empty. She reached her car, pressing unlock. A folded paper was tucked under her windshield wiper. Eleanor looked around. The garage was empty. She pulled on gloves before touching it, preserving evidence. The note was typed, no signature. 4 lines. You won your case. Congratulations, but you are asking questions about things you do not understand. Some stones are better left unturned. Eleanor's hands tightened on the paper. Not a direct threat. Nothing prosecutable. Just a warning from someone who knew where she parked, knew her schedule, knew she was still digging. She photographed it from multiple angles, then placed it in an evidence bag. Tomorrow she would give it to Reed. As she drove home, Eleanor checked her mirrors frequently. No one followed. But the message had been delivered. Someone was watching, and whoever they were not done yet.